Okay, it's that time of the week. We are featuring a I'm content creator who's an estranged parent. Yeah, let's just get into it. This one's going to be a doozy. And I've actually featured this particular creator before. They are no contact with at least one of their children. I think all of them. I haven't done a deep dive, but I know that they're very, very bitter and very much feeling abandoned by their child. But it's evident to see that they don't do ownership and empathy. I actually think this person would be NPD, like legitimately. I'm not a diagnostician. I'm not qualified and I haven't talked to her directly, but when I watch her content and see how hard she comes at people, and actually, well, yeah, I'm just going to get into it. This one is so hard for me to watch. I have to tell you, I really I stay away from this on purpose. However, I think it's important to expose these types of estranged parents because there are estranged parents out there who are looking for community in the wrong place. And I would like to be able to rescue them from more wounding, which is going to be caused by someone who really is just on the internet gaining supply and not caring about the consequences of the things that they talk about and share.
Going no contact is a last resort. Bullshit. Literally hundreds of different parents on my wall who have said one day we were fine and then we weren't. And they are unclear as to why their kid is no contact. So whether or not you're having conversations, when you have a conversation, the intent of a conversation, the dogs are bothering me. The intent of a conversation is that the other person actually gets to also respond, right? And so if you're having a conversation where you think you're saying something, but they don't understand what you're saying, that's not a conversation. That's you playing mental telepathy games with the other person. I think absolutely people wake up one day and think this is the day they're going no contact. Again, my channel is not for abusive parents. My channel is for people who were decent parents. Maybe they weren't, maybe they gave too much, right? Do you guys ever think of that? Maybe they gave too much, and then when they weren't able to sustain that level of giving, then the love become unconditional, or I should say conditional, on the estranged child's part. And I'm not referring to my own case. Again, I can have opinions in this space as someone who was estranged as a kid and alienated as a kid without bringing my own kids into this. Someone on here said I bashed my kids. I've never once come on here and bashed my kids, like literally not one time. So feel free to DM me the video where I have bashed my kids. Then she goes on to say, in most cases, the EP wasn't listening to what the child was saying. First of all, her first comment was, parents refused to take accountability.
Did you hear the leak? Became conditional on the child's part. Maybe you overgave. In the situations, I've seen this time and time and time again, where the adult children have been really conditioned to be financially dependent on the toxic parent longer than they should be, haven't been set up for life, haven't been parented in a way that would actually give them autonomy. That parent uses money, weaponizes money, support as a transaction. You better behave or else. And I see these adult children, particularly when they get married, start to gain that independence because maybe they're building a family and they, have maybe their spouse. I've seen this. So like many, many times, the spouse is like, we don't need their money and we don't need this relationship of transaction. This is a problem. This is a problem in our lives. Let's back off. Let's not take any more stuff from them. And let's, try to work the relationship out. And it doesn't work because now that parent has lost that type of power and control, and they're still behaving like they have that power and control, and they won't change their behavior. And the thing is, no contact is a last resort. None of us want to be out here without parents. And just because that parent doesn't want to listen in the conversation doesn't mean we didn't have the conversation. Do I think and do I know for a fact that there are parents out there who are left feeling confused? Yes, absolutely. Because they weren't listening, not because the evidence wasn't there. And in the case of abuse, which, there's a difference between passing down trauma and abuse, obviously. In the case of passing down trauma, those parents oftentimes end up really lost. I've been an estranged parent. I know what I did wrong. And when my daughter came to me and we had a talk about it and we worked on our relationship, oh my gosh, we had a conversation. And I listened, I heard her, I validated her, and it's been decades. Well, it's been almost 20 years since that talk. No, sorry. It's been like 16 years since that talk. We were in a relationship prior to the talk. And eventually she gained the trust in me to want to have the talk. And I knew why she went no contact, but I can't say that every single parent feels exactly the same way. I'm going to give her, she makes a point when she makes a point. The problem is when she makes a point, she's using it as a blanket, as a cover for her own bad behavior. She's not making the point that most estrangements are caused by abuse. And the estrangements that are caused by passing down trauma, it's often because one parent, the one who passed down the trauma, married an abusive parent and didn't maybe protect the child. There's other dynamics at play in here. Anyway, let's continue on, shall we? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To take accountability. And my question to her was, how could we come on here and take accountability to strangers that that you would be happy with? And of course, that's the question that she didn't answer, because there's no way for us to take accountability to people we don't know and we're not related to, and we didn't push out of our cooch, because it's none of their business, right? So yes, you can have a channel without consistently getting into the dregs of what your personal situation is. You can have a content about a subject where you have opinions without having to consistently preface every video with, I've taken accountability. Like, what does accountability mean to you, estranged adults who had all of these conversations, supposedly, and somehow still managed to go no contact? Because no contact, except in the cases of abuse, and yes, emotional abuse counts, no contact.
Okay, I don't follow her. I don't engage with her content. She comes up on my FYP here and there. Somebody sends me something that she, did or said here and there. So that's where the familiarity comes from. Given that I don't follow her, I can say unequivocally, she did bash her kids in a very backhanded, I know, shocking way. She talked about how her kids abandoned her and how horrible they were for doing so in her time of need when her marriage was falling apart. That was actually bashing her kids, in my opinion. I get to have an opinion too. Isn't that awesome?
No contact for politics, for religion, for, for reasons you're not even able to articulate. In my opinion, because it's my channel that you can scroll by, those aren't valid reasons. Other people are like, you don't get to decide what are valid reasons. Sure I do. Sure I do. Then she goes on to say, in most cases, the EP wasn't listening to what the child was saying. Were you, I also asked if you were estranged, which you didn't answer. Was the estranged kid listening to the parent? You guys keep coming at this as if this is a one-way street, and by God, parents better fucking listen to you, or this is what happens. And as literal, excuse me, hold on. Conversations are meant to be a dual activity, right? So everyone, all these estranged adults, frankly, who are like, they didn't listen to me, are you listening to them? Or are you just spouting what you want to say and expecting everyone to go along with the program and never disagree with you? Because that's unrealistic. It's not how humans work. It isn't how relationships work.
Now, come on. She knows damn well why that person didn't respond when she went into the whole thing of, what am I supposed to take accountability for? How are we supposed to take accountability? Why would I share that? Blah, blah, blah. Why would you share that? Because if you're going to be on a platform talking about the dynamics and estrangements and things like that, because you yourself have experience with it, then share the experience and take accountability. She's cherry picking what she wants to talk about, and she's attacking estranged adult children. And just as a little bit of going backwards, when she talks about, oh, in my platform, I'm not talking about abusive parents. But the thing is, she doesn't recognize emotional violence as abuse. She recognizes emotional violence as drama. That's what she calls it. She's done it over and over and over again. And apparently she's the authority on abuse, and she gets to decide what's abusive enough to justify an adult child going no contact. And newsflash, like this news just in, the majority of adult children who go no contact don't go no contact because of what happened to them in childhood. That contributed to fracturing the relationship, obviously. They go no contact because the relationship in their adulthood continues to be traumatic, continues to be painful, and that parent refuses to take accountability, refuses to change their behavior, refuses to hear, to listen, to respect boundaries, and treat their adult child with the respect that they give to other people who they don't have a biological link to. You know, they treat strangers better than they treat their own adult children. And that's why the no contact happens. It isn't because of what went on in childhood for the most part, because most of us want to have a loving relationship with their parent, and most of us will jump through every hoop to get there, including letting go of the past. I tried that, by the way, as long as the present is a good present.
It certainly isn't how the parent-child dynamic usually works. If there was a shit ton of parents going no contact with their kids, which frankly they used to in the 70s and the 80s, they would just go no contact with their kids, and I didn't agree with that either. Because you were the one that raised them. I agree with that thought process. But how would everyone feel if it were the parents getting on here going, you know,
who had all these conversations supposedly? So we're all just a bunch of liars. Right? We're just a bunch of liars. We didn't really have the conversations. I think what the accountability thing is just killing me. I'm supposed to say I took accountability in every video. She's never said it in any video. Not that I'm aware of. Again, I haven't seen that much of her content, but I've seen enough to get the vibe that I don't think she's ever said that. I'll eat my words if I find a video out there where she has. I'll absolutely own it. That being said, I think that she's looking for a conversation where an adult child says, if you don't respect my boundaries, I'm going to go no contact with you. I think that's what she's looking for. It isn't our responsibility to threaten our parent. And some people, by the way, do that. And they say, you know, if you're not going to meet me halfway, if you're not going to go to therapy with me, if you're not going to do anything to repair this, I'm not going to be able to maintain a relationship with you. I know people that have done that. How many times are we supposed to have a conversation until it's good enough to walk away by her standard? Or what do we need to say by her standard as she refuses to take accountability?
going, you know, listen, they wouldn't listen, so I cut them off. That's their problem. I moved away, I cut them off. No, they were good kids. No, didn't do drugs, didn't get arrested, didn't steal anything. No, they were totally good kids. But you know what? They weren't listening to me. So fuck them, right? Cutting someone off without abuse isn't healing. So if you've cut someone off and you had a decent childhood, it isn't healing you. You are literally creating new cycles that your children will then have to go through and try to fix. Because everyone's sitting here going, I'm breaking cycles.
Okay, I'll eat my words on this one. She just said emotional abuse is abuse. She just said it. I have literally heard her say in other videos, oh, your parents hurt your feelings or they said the wrong thing to you. That's not emotional abuse. Stop making drama. I've literally heard her say that. I would be really interested to see what she defines as emotional abuse. I'm quite sure she won't make any content like that, but I'd be interested to see her actual perspective on that.
Because everyone's sitting here going, I'm breaking cycles. I'm the cycle breaker. Like all this drama, right? there's tons of people who have been estranged and alienated prior to you. So if you were breaking cycles, it would have already been broken because there are people who came before you. You guys aren't new. Again, you're not new. You're basically avoiding shit. You're dressing it up as empowerment and you're patting yourself on the back for shit that is dramatically affecting the people that have loved you the most.
Well, damn, that was quite a mouthful and some word salad in there. Parents regularly went no contact with their kids in the 70s and 80s? Show me. Show me. How do you know that? I don't know that. I've never heard that. Not in that way. I do know that there are parents who go no contact with their kids. Guess what? There's parents who abandon their children when they are children. What the fuck is she talking about? Ay, 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 ay. And, you know, what, like, parents, the parents won't listen. Well, yeah, I mean, what are we supposed to do? How do you have a relationship with someone who doesn't want to take accountability? And why should you? And this thing about breaking the cycles and empowerment, let me tell you something. My children know that love feels good. They know what unconditional love feels like. You know why? Because they weren't exposed to the people I went no contact from. That's why. They didn't get a mind fuck of a childhood. They weren't raised in confusion. They weren't triangulated. Damn right, going no contact breaks the cycle. And I have 3 healthy, loving adult children and 2 grandchildren to show for it. They will never have experienced what I experienced. They weren't exposed. It is healing. And for a person who's being systematically abused, whose wounds are being reopened by the person who put them there, taking space at a minimum is extremely healing. It allows for perspective. And then it allows us to make a decision whether or not we want to try again, if it's worth it, from a position of having self-confidence and self-esteem and love and all of those things that parent tried to make sure we never gained. I know there's more that she said, but I kind of have a headache from it. Like, I don't even know where else to go with this, except to say that it's very evident to me why this person continues to be estranged and why she will always be estranged. She's saying she can have her point of view and not bring that stuff in, but she is bringing it in because her point of view is making it seem like the power dynamic between parent and child never existed. And you can't rewrite history or biology. Can't do it. Bottom line is, we as children cannot form the relationship that a parent has all the power in. We don't lay the foundation. We as adult children didn't make the relationship become what it was. We didn't form the relationship in the beginning. There's a power dynamic at play that's being completely ignored here. They were the bigger person who didn't want to be the bigger person and still don't want to be the bigger person. I was putting together the video that you just watched, and there were a couple of thoughts that I had that I wanted to share. One is when this estranged parent creator was talking about how in the 70s and 80s it was like, you know, normal, or however she worded it, I don't remember now, to go no contact with your kids. And by the way, there are plenty of parents out there who discard their kids in their adulthood. This is not a one-sided thing. It happens. And sometimes it happens for a good reason. I'm not going to deny that all adult children grow into these wonderful people who, you know, we should have relationships with. You know, I mean, my mother's a sociopath and a narcissist. If my grandmother had gone no contact with her, could I really blame her, even though she made her into who she was? It's a little tangled in some of this stuff. Sometimes people raise children, particularly in narcissistic family dynamics, that end up also being very narcissistic. You know, you reap what you sow. This is where this actually is applicable. Anyway, as she said that, she did a little body language move that, you know, not in and of itself, but is a sign of deception. Like, she knew that she wasn't actually being so honest there. That's my opinion on that. That's my point of view. And as I roll into my point of view, she acts like you can go online and say anything you want and you don't have to be concerned with or take accountability for what happens next. And yeah, when you're talking about something like fashion, for example, I love fashion, that's why I picked it, and you're like, this dress brand is the best brand ever and whatever, and that's your point of view, you're not harming somebody else. You're not creating psychological damage. You're not impacting significant or even insignificant relationships. This is not that. When you go online and you're tasting, a piece of cake and you're going, oh my God, this is the best cake ever. Obviously, my taste buds may not be your taste buds. If I buy the cake, I'm out, a few bucks, whatever it is. It's not a big deal. I didn't like it. No problem. Life goes on. When you're out here talking about things and doing some of it as if it's fact, and you are invalidating child abuse, emotional violence in particular, like this was the first video where I've actually seen her acknowledge that emotional abuse is abuse. In the past, she's oftentimes classified it as drama. And to that end, as I think about that out loud, because I've seen enough content to know that she does that, and this is the first time I've seen her doing it this way, in her definition, in her point of view, what qualifies as abuse and emotional abuse? She acts as if and talks as if she is the end all be all of, well, my point of view is if it's not abuse, it's not abuse. And she acts like, because she puts POV in there, all of a sudden, she's under some sort of cover of, not having to take accountability. There are estranged parents out there looking for community and healing. And she is actually very, very divisive. She isn't teaching people how to take accountability. She's all about, well, what happened to gratitude? Just be grateful I brought you into the world, Oh, I wasn't the perfect parent. All the stuff that we hear them say. And estranged parents who are looking for healing that watch that think that that's okay. You just gave them permission to continue to behave badly. They're likely doing it already. Instead of opening up their minds to a different way of doing it, she's putting the responsibility on the adult children. Well, you should be working it out because you should be grateful. So that was just my final thoughts on the video, and I felt like it's important for us to pick up that part of the dialogue as well. I am responsible for my content. I'm responsible for how my content comes across to some degree, because I can't be responsible for everybody else's point of view, but I'm accountable to not create content that continues to support division. That's my opinion. And if something is my point of view, it's my point of view, but it's not necessarily fact. And I can own that. And if I misspeak or I'm wrong, I'm a human being, I'm often wrong, and somebody points that out, I don't have a problem coming back in and going, I didn't look at it that way. And I might remove the content, or I might make another dialogue out of it and probably remove the content as well. I have done that in the past, which I stated earlier. At the end of the day, if we're going to create content that actually has a lasting impact on other people's lives, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves, to speak with looking at the different sides in mind, the different perspectives, and also gear it towards actually healing people as individuals first and foremost, and also, if we can do so, helping them to heal relationships. And I say first and foremost because the more a person can love themselves, particularly when we're talking about emotionally immature parents, are very insecure individuals, they have very low self-esteem. There are things going on underneath the surface. These are actually fragile people who have probably, or almost definitely, I don't like absolutes, suffered abuse themselves. And if they go and they work on the things that hurt them, that created their coping mechanisms, like for example, when they hear from their adult child, you hurt me, they don't go into, I wasn't the perfect parent. They worked on themselves enough to recognize, okay, my action was a bad action, doesn't make me a bad person, then everybody's winning. And I think that should be our goal for anyone out there who's creating content that's not related to, a flavor of a cake or a fashion designer or something in between. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you. And please comment in, because your comments help me build the content you're looking for. Okay? All right. See you soon. Thank you.